Is Apple still a good investment? That's what we're talking about today in this video. It's no secret that if you have held Apple over the past couple of decades, you are feeling good. You are up big. It is one of the best performing companies in the 21st century. And really, as we've entered this internet era, anyone who has held on to these valuable tech stocks is doing pretty good. However, we've recently seen all this tariff drama. We've seen the US and China get into a bit of a trade war. And for Apple, a company who does most of their manufacturing in China, this is having a negative impact on them. We've also seen that while Apple has created a lot of great products and services, you can think about the iPhone, the Mac, the Apple Watch, they really haven't created a ton of new successful products. They've been trying, but they've really just kind of become a little bit stagnant when it comes to putting new stuff out there. Now, I do see some areas for growth with the company, and we're going to talk about those in the video. We're also going to talk about some of the ways that the company has become a bit stagnant. We're going to get into it all and look at the future outlook for the company. Before I do get into it, please make sure to like the video and also subscribe to the YouTube. Really appreciate your support. I'm also going to put a QR code down below for a Bitcoin tip. So if you want to support the channel, feel free to leave me a little tip. Now let's get into it. Apple is one of the largest and most successful companies in the world. They're currently the second largest company in the world by market cap. Apple's market cap is 3.07 trillion. It's just behind Microsoft, who just recently went on a little run. And Apple stock has massively appreciated over the past couple of decades here. Let's go ahead and take a look at a little chart of Apple stock. And this shows the stock's performance since 1980. It is up 159,000% since 1980. So if you've been holding Apple for the last 20 to 40 years, even the last 10 years, you have been doing pretty good. And this makes sense, right? We have entered into this internet era where people are using technological devices, people are using the internet, and Apple has really been one of these companies that has been at the forefront of all of that. Most of us here that I know in the US, or at least on the West Coast, have an iPhone. I'm using a Mac computer right now. So Apple has really solidified themselves as one of the top companies in the world. While Apple has been one of the best performing companies, they've recently been heavily impacted by these tariffs. Apple does most of their manufacturing in China and other parts of Asia. Apple works with Taiwanese contractors as well as other Asian contractors for their manufacturing. The big one they work with is Foxconn, a Taiwanese contractor operating in China. They also work with other large contractors like Pegatron. 80% of Apple's US bound products are produced in China. So as you can see, Apple is very reliant upon China and they're not too happy about these new tariffs. However, there is some good news for Apple. The large tariff on China is over 100%. I believe it is 125% now. It's constantly changing. It might even be higher, but there is an exemption on consumer electronics and components, things like smartphones and computers. So Apple is paying a 20% tariff rather than a tariff of over 100%. So that is very good news for them. If they had to pay a tariff of over 100%, that would be doubling their expenses. It would lead to higher prices for their products here in the US. So they're kind of dodging a bullet there. However, a 20% tariff is still significant, and it is going to lead to increased expenses for the company and probably increased prices for their products here in the United States. While tariffs have been a problem for Apple, their main problem may be a lack of growth. When we look at Apple, they have these great products, things like iPhones and Macs, but they really haven't produced a lot of new products that have been big hits. We can look at the Apple Watch. That's been successful over the past decade here, and the Apple Watch is actually over 20% of the global smartwatch market, so that was a big hit. They tried to expand with the Apple Vision Pro last year, but it was kind of a flop. They were expecting it to sell 700,000 to 800,000 units in 2024, and they only sold between 420,000 and 500,000 units. Part of the reason why this Apple Vision Pro may have been a flop is because it's pretty expensive. It's priced at $3,499, and not everyone can afford to buy that toy, right? It's a pretty cool thing. I heard some good reviews. I think I was listening to like the All In podcast, and they were talking about how amazing it is. But when you look at the price tag, most people can't afford that. And the other question is this something that people really need or want that much? It seems like over the past 5 years, there was this hype around this virtual reality, these goggles you put on your face, but it seems like that hype has died down. I'm not seeing a lot of people walking around out on the streets with these Apple Vision Pros on like some people thought we would see. The iPhone has been their most successful product. It's 49% of their revenue. One of the issues with the iPhones is that they don't really improve when they put out new iPhones, right? They upgrade the camera a little, they upgrade the processor chips to make it faster or to make it better in certain ways. But really, if we look at an iPhone from 5 years ago compared to their more recent releases, they're pretty much the same, right? And maybe that's just because they've kind of perfected the product a little bit. I think the iPhone works great. I love using mine. It's easy to use. But they haven't really found many ways to really upgrade these devices. They try little things like removing the home button or removing an outlet on it, but they really haven't seen a lot of growth when it comes to improving this device. When we look at Macs, I really like my Mac computer. Macs are definitely a popular option for people in the PC market. Macs actually are only 8% of the global PC market, so maybe this is an area where the company could grow a little bit if they can grab more of that global market share. But when we look at the company, they've been selling these things like iPhones, Macs, Apple Watches, and these devices are great, but they've struggled to find new products to sell. Now let's talk about Apple's growth potential. The main area where I could see Apple growing is with this new partnership with OpenAI that was announced on June 10th of last year. As we know, OpenAI has been one of the most successful companies in the AI space. We've seen what they've done with ChatGPT, which has become very, very popular, and they are a leader when it comes to generative AI. And for Apple, who is one of the leading tech companies out here, they have kind of fallen behind in this space, while other tech companies like Google and Microsoft are kind of leaping ahead when it comes to AI. So rather than trying to catch up and do everything in-house and have their own generative AI division, Apple is teaming up with OpenAI, an established player in the space who is going to help them enhance their products. And I think this is big news. I think that if Apple can integrate OpenAI into its hardware, into its software, then they could potentially increase their market share. And when we look at Apple, yes, they have struggled to find new products, but maybe that's because they're good at what they do, right? They create great phones, great computers, and some of these other great technological devices. And maybe rather than focusing on new products, they should just focus on expanding their market share when it comes to their current products. Stick to what you know and try to make these products better. If they can integrate OpenAI into their iPhones, into their computers, and they may have already started doing this, I'm not 100% sure, then more people may come in and buy Apple devices. So I think that this is big news. I think it's also great for OpenAI as they get to tap into Apple's customer base. They get to tap into the 1.5 billion iPhone users out there. They get to tap into the 2.2 billion active Apple devices. So I think this is a win-win. And you also think about the fact that if these newer iPhones, if these newer Apple devices are integrated with OpenAI software, then all these Apple users may be more incentivized to upgrade to the newer iPhone or the newer MacBook to access this feature, right? One way that Apple could continue to grow as a company is with a transformative new product. But you just think, what would that product be? They tried to expand with the Apple Vision Pro last year and it wasn't super successful. Around a decade ago, they started developing the iCar. They started working on an autonomous EV vehicle. In 2014, they were trying to compete with players like Tesla and Waymo, but that ended up being a flop. Project Titan was canceled, I believe, last year in 2024. So they wasted a ton of time and energy working on this iCar, and they never even really got one on the road. And you just think, what could Apple really produce that is greater than the products they're already selling? Maybe they could try to enhance the Apple Vision Pro, make it more affordable, or just make it cooler. But maybe this is something that not everybody is going to use, right? Maybe there's just not going to be a huge market for this like some people thought. Maybe the partnership with OpenAI will lead to some more opportunities, some new ideas. Maybe Apple could venture into something in the AI space like robotics. But who knows? You think about Apple and their mainstream product that really changed the game for the company, the product that really made them one of the most valuable companies in the world is the iPhone, right? That was the big hit. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to replicate that success. So we will see if they can come out with a new product, but maybe the best thing for them to do is try to expand their market share for the products that they're already involved with. Apple could also grow by becoming more dominant in emerging markets. Here in the United States, Apple devices are very popular. Lots of people have iPhones, but when we look at the world, Android is dominant. When we look at the emerging markets, 80 to 90% of the smartphone market share is for Android. So if Apple could somehow tap into these emerging markets, maybe somehow produce an iPhone that they could sell for cheaper, then they could access a larger world market. Now, the thing is, they just got hit with these tariffs, which is leading to higher production costs. And when we look at the iPhone, it is kind of like a luxury smartphone. And maybe they should just focus on the current market that they have, right? Trying to sell these more expensive smartphones rather than trying to compete with some of these cheaper smartphones that are being used around the world. Now let's bring it back to the question we started the video with. Is Apple still a good investment? Is Apple a good buy? Well, I love Apple. I think Apple is a great company. I use the iPhone. I'm using a MacBook right now. While I love Apple devices, I just don't see a ton of room for growth for the company. The company is at a $3 trillion market cap. It's one of the 3 largest companies in the world. And when I'm looking at investments, I'm looking for investments with a little bit more upside. If I was looking in the stock market, I maybe be looking at small cap stocks, some companies with some more room for growth. Now, I do think this OpenAI partnership is interesting. And if you're a big believer in OpenAI and you think that this partnership is going to lead to all these great new opportunities, then hey, maybe Apple is the investment for you. This is not investment advice. Definitely do your own research. I just don't think that Apple is going to be able to come out with a transformative new product. I think that the product for Apple, the product that made Apple into the giant that it is today, is the iPhone. And I don't think they're going to be able to replicate that. I think that Apple has gone through their growth era, right? If you are looking at Apple now, you've kind of missed a big rally, right? When Apple came out with the iPhone, that was the moment. That was the moment that changed things for the company. I do think Apple devices are great. I like being part of the Apple network. I like the blue text, the iMessage, the fact that I can sync all my data across my different devices, and I will continue to use Apple devices, but I will not be buying Apple stock. That's going to wrap it up for this one. If you didn't like and subscribe, please make sure to do that now. Really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon.